So there is apparently an MLB Major League Baseball, for those, I actually need to keep that in mind, MLB Lockout going on, and MLB Commissioner Rob Manfred was asked some questions. Here's how that went.
Hey, Rob, understanding that deadlines create urgency, you locked out the players to jumpstart the negotiations. It feels like real bargaining went on just in the last 24 to 36 hours. I'm sure people are wondering why not over the last three months or even longer to get to a point where you're not necessarily canceling games because there's some momentum here.
Yeah, I think the best answer to that question is the last 10 days. We've been here ready to bargain, full committees, owners, players for 10 days, and it got going 2 days before the deadline. That's the best explanation I can give you.
Clay, from a layman's perspective, we haven't had sports really, it's been on and off. How can they not be all fired up? What's going on?
So the season was supposed to start on March 31st, and what they've effectively done is now be unable to get a resolution, a collective bargaining agreement between the players and the owners that they can agree on. And so they've knocked out the first 7 games, effectively, of the season. Now, they play 162 Major League Baseball games, and the relationship between the players' union and the owners has been particularly contentious for some time now, and certainly COVID, I would say, just kind of added fuel to the fire over this situation, because a couple of years ago, if you're a baseball fan, they couldn't figure out how to get the season back started, and they only played a 60-game season. And so I am a baseball fan, Buck, but I'm not a diehard, right? It doesn't really matter to me what's happening in April, May, and June. I'm going to take my kids down to Atlanta Braves. We've got a great affiliate station right there in Atlanta, right by the Battery, the park where the Atlanta Braves, the World Series champion Atlanta Braves, by the way, are playing. And not to cast aspersions against them, but you and I are actually going to be down in Houston. And the last time I was down in Houston was for the World Series. We're doing a big event on Friday. And we'll be doing the show live from Houston on Thursday and Friday. Our friends Jesse Kelly and everybody
Michael Berry,
else down there. Michael Berry is putting together.
Yeah, KTRH is our affiliate station down there, which we're really excited that they're going to be hosting us. And we're going to get over 1,000
one
people
in that market. We like to say hi to everybody down in Houston, and there are going to be several thousand people at that event that Michael Berry has put together on Friday that should be really cool and we're excited about. The last time I was down there was with the World Series. I went and watched the Astros play against the Braves, and so it was an awesome time. But I tend to, maybe I'm in the minority here, but I don't really care that much if they play 140 games or they play 120. They're not going to cancel the season. Eventually, it's going to get worked out. And the fact that they're not playing 162 has not really got me that riled up, but it is a big story. And if you're a diehard baseball fan, there are a lot of people, Buck, who just feel like baseball can't get out of its own way. If we'd been doing this show 50 years ago, I would have said, hey, there are 3 sports that matter in America today: horse racing, boxing, and baseball. And obviously horse racing and boxing, but for every now and then major events, we really don't pay much attention to in the nation. And baseball is kind of hanging on there, but it feels as if baseball continues to shoot itself in the foot over and over again. And this, for many people, is just the latest symptom of the players and the owners not being able to get everything moving in the right direction to both end up on the same side of an equation where fans can just be able to watch the games.
It is fun to go to a baseball stadium.
When's the last time you went to a baseball game?
Oh, gosh, 20 years. Probably.
20 years?
Probably.
I mean, because what I love about going to baseball games is I like to just go with buddies or take my kids, have a couple of beers, get a hot dog. Baseball is one of those great sports where you can go and just chill. There's a high level of intensity, it feels like to me, when you go to a football game. There aren't that many of them. They matter so much. For basketball, certainly when you get into the postseason, it feels a lot more intense. Hockey, I think it's hard to play at half speed. Baseball feels like the rhythm of the summer. And, man, I love when it's a great night, perfect weather just to go sit out. I'm surprised you haven't gone and checked out the new Yankee Stadium.
I think I did go maybe 10 or 15 years ago. I have been to the new Yankee Stadium. And I did get to see when I was in high school, actually, I got taken to a World Series Yankees game.
Well, that's pretty awesome.
Which was pretty cool. So I do remember that.
That intensity is electric for a game like that. We need next time I'm up in New York, now that they've effectively ended all the mandates, or at least they're planning to by, March 7th, I think, and I'll be able to re-enter the city without having to be able to be locked up in my hotel room. We should go to a baseball game. I bet we got a bunch of fans out there of the Yankees and or the Mets to go to a game when the weather's good, chill, have some beers, just kick back. We've moved into the month of March. Buck, when's the last time you filled out a bracket for the NCAA tournament?
I've never.
Do you even know what I'm talking about?
I've never filled out a bracket.
You've never filled out an NCAA tournament bracket?
No.
Not even when you were a kid?
No.
It's rare that I wish there was video of my jaw just dropping like this. I would bet 97%, 98% of our audience has filled out an NCAA tournament bracket at some point, even if it's just, hey, here's a $10, here's a bracket, go fill it out, $10 challenge at your place of work. Maybe when you were a kid in school. I know when I was a kid, teachers, we used to fill out the brackets, and if you won, you got like a pizza gift certificate or something. I am legitimately in disbelief that you've never filled out an NCAA bracket.
I mean, I think it's just not as common in the Northeast because we don't have a huge NCAA March Madness. I'm
not gonna let you get. I went to school in the Northeast. Every kid I knew was doing bracket challenges.
They're online in the Mid-Atlantic, sir. That's
GW. It's all. I went to George Washington. For people who don't know, it's all Northeastern kids. It's all Long Island kids, all Philly kids. Yes, they have like geographic diversity now a little bit more, but it's a very Northeastern school.
This will not be news to the audience that Buck is a strange duck. So here we go.
I am in where's Allie? Has everybody else on the show? Surely even Allie.
You guys all. I'm asking everyone. Oh, I got both of our producers here in New York, Mojo and Mike. I mean, I'm sure producer Mark, who loves sports, has probably filled out brackets every year since he could write. But both our producers here never have.
Brackets.
They've never filled it out. Both of them never filled it out. They just told me right here, right now. Mojo and Mike, no brackets.
I am in. The reason I was just bringing this up because we're now into March, and March Madness is basically our unifying symbol of excellence for everywhere but this studio, evidently, where the majority of people have never filled out brackets. Hey, here's what I want you to do. If you are as stunned by this revelation as I am, just tag at Buck Sexton, at Clay Travis on Twitter, and let me know, because I feel like I'm in I can't even conceptualize. My kids, my 7-year-old has already filled out a bracket.
I mean, their dad did found a sports network. To be fair.
A sports media company. That's true. They're probably in the high-end percentile for sports knowledge based on young kids. But, all right, so we're going to have to come back to this. Yesterday, Buck Sexton admitted that he had never filled out an NCAA tournament bracket. And you got a lot of reaction on that. I tweeted about it on social. A lot of people, this is going to be the first year you're going to fill out a bracket.
I'm going to crush it. I'm going to be like a guru of brackets because apparently year one, you got the hot hand.
Bracketologist, everybody who's ever filled these things out, anybody knows you put in $10, $20 in your company bracket challenge. It's always the people that have absolutely no clue about college basketball that end up dominating and winning these things. But there's been a lot of crazy protocols that have been put in place in the world of sports surrounding COVID. Just in the last 30 minutes or so, the NFL has officially announced they are done with all COVID protocols. They're no longer going to be testing. They're no longer going to be mandating vaccines or holding people out for 10 days if they happen to test positive. The Players Association and the teams are saying, we're over it. Now, you kind of got a little preview that they had agreed to this, Buck, because nobody tested positive once the playoffs started in the NFL. You had guys sitting out like crazy near the tail end of the regular season, and then they basically said, hey, we're going to end this. They didn't announce it, but now they are officially announcing it. Now, some people may say, well, why does this matter? The NFL is such a leviathan on the American cultural landscape. that what they are doing will translate into many different high schools, into many different little leagues, and every sports league, I think, will end up following them and effectively saying, after 2 years of insanity, we're back to 100% normalcy.
What are the chances, though, that there's a rebound in all of this when the next season comes along again and they'll do some restricted version of restrictions or a lessened version? I mean, this is the big thing. I mean, last night, you flew today, I flew last night. I did have a mask below my nose pretty much the entire
Anybody
flight.
say anything to
you?
you?
No one said a word. I walked through the airport, mask down below my mouth, but like on, the sort of chin strap mask the whole time. Nobody said a word. I think the mask shamers know they'd really have their hands full with, why are you killing grandma when you're breathing normally here when you can only breathe normally everywhere else in the country? But that said, it's because we're also at the downslope of the COVID season. So do you think the NFL is done forever, or are they done for now?
I think they're done forever because I think the players are really over it now. They recognize that, Buck, they're under far more danger getting whipped, knocked out, beaten down all over the field. The game of football is far more dangerous to a 25-year-old than COVID is. And I think they finally all recognize this. And I think every sports league is going to follow the NFL. So I think this is going to be a major cultural moment in terms of letting people get back to normalcy. Remember, there's still some kids playing basketball with masks on in some states, which is so stupid. It makes my head hurt.
I will not wear a mask when I fill out my bracket, Clay. It's going to be amazing.
Oh, that's perfect. Buck, it's possible that I'm going to be able to come up to New York City again at some point soon, as New York City is basically planning to do away with the mask mandates and the COVID vaccine mandates. But there's one absurdity here that deserves to be talked about because it still points to how crazy many of these rules are. Kyrie Irving refused to get vaccinated. He's a player for the Brooklyn Nets team. And he now, under the new New York City rules, is still not going to be able to play in games in New York City, but he can sit courtside and watch them. And also, any player who's unvaccinated that travels to New York City can play in games. And Eric Adams got asked about this absurdity, the new mayor of New York City, and he had this to say.
Listen, I want Kyrie on the court. I would do anything to get that ring. So badly I want it. But there's so much at stake here. And, I spoke with the owner of the team. We want to find a way to get Kyrie on the court, but this is a big issue. And it would send the wrong message just to have an exception for one player when we're telling a countless number of New York City employees, if you don't follow the rules, you won't be able to be employed.
This is about punishing those who don't comply. Obvious.
Yes.
Right? I mean, there's
no, at this point, health requirement,
none.
right? Because you think about this. Again, he can sit courtside, eat popcorn, have a soda, have a beer, no issue. And this is about still trying to punish people over whether or not they got the vaccine.
I've seen videos of high school, junior high kids in places like New York playing basketball, and then they all mask up when they sit on the bench. But when they're actually, right up against each other playing the game, breathing, and there's spit flying everywhere and everything else, no mask, it's not about the science. I mean, this is what people have been like, how did I know that masks work? How did we know that masks were going to do anything? One of the easiest ways was that early on, Clay, we would talk about actual human usage versus theoretical laboratory testing. Human usage of a mask, which we all know because we've had to wear these stupid things for 2 years, is pull it up, pull it down, move it over, put it on, take it off. That is, imagine I sent you into a room with mustard gas and said, take your gas mask off, breathe a few minutes, put it back on, take it off. You'd be like, well, I'm getting exposed to the gas. It was impossible, the arguments that they were making, impossibly stupid arguments. It was like the people on the airplanes, remember the airline attendants used to tell you to put your Kindle away because it was an electronic device. I don't know if you, there was a time when you couldn't have a Kindle in your hand.
Yes.
Because it constituted, it might create I was like, if this electronic interference can crash or interfere with this plane in any way,
we're in trouble.
We are all going to die. All right. There'll be planes falling out of the sky all the time. And they finally got rid of that because it was too stupid. But this is where we've gone now, Clay. They're clinging to the things that are so dumb that no serious person can believe them. Like this policy with Kyrie Irving.
Like the Kyrie Irving, and even crazier kids, right? Anybody who's ever watched a kid, the idea that kids wearing masks were going to somehow protect people inside of schools was laughably absurd.
Hey, Fauci needs some PR these days. He needs some. He hasn't had any reps on TV.
Maybe
or radio.
he'll come on our show.
Maybe
now.
he should come on. He could explain to me how mask up between bites is scientific. The evil little tyrant. The